This is Histories and Mysteries. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Jessica. Or am I saying?
Yeah, and on
things?
today's
Off to a great start. Little miscommunication on what was going on. And on today's episode, Ashley is talking all about death.
Mm-hmm.
And I am going to be telling a really cool historical story. A couple stories, because my first one was really short, but my girl's a badass. So I wanted to talk about her.
And this is like World War II era stories, right?
Yeah, like Nazi Germany era.
Okay.
So super excited.
Yeah.
It was really interesting. And as you know, I was listening to a song and crying the whole time I was researching.
And I was like, why don't you just not listen to that song?
Because it went so well with my story.
Gotcha.
It's from Game of Thrones. It was really sad.
There's a lot of sad stuff from Game of Thrones.
It was really sad. I could not watch it after Pedro Pascal died.
Who the fuck was he in Game of Thrones?
Pedro Pascal?
Yeah.
He was the dude that had his head crushed in by the mountain.
You're right. I forgot about his character. I loved him.
Yeah, you forgot about him.
I did. He was such a good character. I forgot that was Pedro Pascal, because that was like before he like really like broke out.
Yeah, and I literally had nightmares about that scene.
He was so close to winning.
I know. I was so mad.
I loved him.
So good.
So I guess I have an announcement that I haven't made.
Yeah, Ashley.
I am pregnant.
Yay.
Yeah, so I'm pretty far along. I'm like 25 weeks. I just like kept forgetting to like announce, because like I didn't know how to just be like, oh, by the way, guys, I'm pregnant. Like it just never seemed to like organically come up. But now I'm like 25 weeks along. So I'm like, well, I'm probably gonna go on maternity leave in a couple weeks here. So
not really a couple of weeks. Don't panic, everybody.
I know. I'm just hoping. I'm just trying to shorten the time in my head. Because I'm getting to the point now where it's like I'm getting uncomfortable. You know, I'm not sleeping well. Like my hips are starting to hurt because everything's starting to really like move because she's getting so much bigger. Oh, it's a girl too, by the way, everybody. A girl. And I just found out that I'm anemic now. So that's been a challenge. And just a lot going on.
That's okay.
Yeah.
And we're gonna do a Record-a-Palooza again. If you were around the first time.
Yes.
We were both pregnant at the same time, and so we kind of did a Record-a-Palooza, and so that you didn't miss out on us.
Yeah. We recorded like, I don't know, like what, 7 episodes or something like that, and then just released them each week. So we'll probably do something similar again.
Yeah, and then if we run out and Ashley wants to stay away for another couple of weeks, then we have other people that can come on.
Yeah, we got you covered. Don't worry. You'll get your daily dose of us, or a weekly dose of us.
Definitely not daily.
Daily. I mean, you could make it daily if you like really drew out our episodes.
Don't do that. I don't think that's good for anybody. Anyways, on that note,
let's talk about death, baby.
Do we all like my ghosty vibes shirt?
Oh, I do like that. That's a very cute.
And there's a big one on the back.
Oh, where'd you get that from?
Cool. Old Navy.
Very cute. Very cute.
Do you guys have Old Navy?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Love me some Old Navy.
I love Old Navy. I got a really cute dress from there too.
They have some cute stuff, and their flip-flops are always cheap.
Love them. Love them. Anyways, let's talk about death.
Yeah, so I was actually so I actually saw this article about this kind of new, I don't say like scientific breakthrough, because it wasn't really a breakthrough, but this new thing that happened in the science community, and I thought it was super interesting. So it kind of made me go on with that. And I got my information from the University of Louisville School of Medicine, sciencealert.com, and Distractify.
Oh, love me some Distractify.
So the ever sought after answer, the always asked question, what happens when we die?
Tell me.
Well, the answer varies from culture to culture, but science might be starting to get some answers, at least scientifically. In this episode, I'm going to talk about scientifically what happens to your brain when you die. And then I have some stories from people that have died and like were resuscitated. And then next week, I'm going to talk about cultural deaths. So like the Grim Reaper and that kind of stuff and the different cultures and their version of death.
That's so cool. Okay.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
I am too, because I love Cinco de Mayo and
yeah,
like,
very cool.
The Day of the Dead.
Yeah, it's a very cool. I wish that we had something like that just to like respect your ancestors and death and stuff like that.
I think other people's cultures are so beautiful and their traditions are so beautiful, and here we are just killing people and doing bad things.
Bad things.
Bad history. Boring history. Canada has such a boring history.
Well, I think you should be happy about that because America's living a really exciting history for people to learn about in years, but I'm not a fan of living through it.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's awful. You can move here.
Yeah. Oh no. Let's see what happens. But so earlier this year, which is surprising to me that it like took so long, but earlier this year, some scientists were able to basically record the first ever like person dying as far as like their brain scans. So what happened was an 87-year-old man had a fall and he developed epilepsy. So he went into the hospital. They hooked him up to an EEG machine to monitor his seizures. And during one of the seizures, he ended up having a cardiac arrest and he passed away. Oh. But they still had the EEG machine on him. So they were able to monitor, they said up to 900 seconds of brain activity. But they really focused in on the 30 seconds before his cardiac arrest and 30 seconds after.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And they noticed changes in brain waves both before and after the heart stopped. So it's kind of like the brain knew it was coming almost. Mm-hmm. And they said that the type of wave changes that happen are usually involved in, quote, high cognitive functions such as concentrating, dreaming, meditation, memory retrieval, information processing, and conscious perceptions, just like those associated with memory flashbacks. So we may very well see our life flash before our eyes as we die, which is...
That's wild.
Yeah. And it really does fit with a lot of people's stories about what happened to them, what they saw when they were technically dead. Your brain may actually be doing that. And the researcher had a very interesting kind of quote. So I copied and pasted this quote in. It says, "It opens an interesting question to me on when you define death. That plays a big role for questions such as, when do you go ahead with organ donation? When are we actually dead? When the heart stops beating because the brain keeps going? Should we record EEG activity in addition to EKG and declare death?" This is a very, very interesting question for me. When is exactly the time we die? We may have tapped the door open now to start discussions about that exact time onset. So very interesting to think about, because right now they consider death when your heart stops. When your heart stops, that's when they call time of death. Yeah. But now they're saying, okay, well, your brain still functions after that. So should they do it by brain function? Very interesting thought.
But like, sorry. But I mean, you basically said it was like 30 seconds before and 30 seconds after.
Well, that's right? What they focused on. Okay, but they had 900 seconds of brain activity.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
What is 900 seconds? Do the math. Because that seems like a lot.
900 divided by 60. 15 minutes.
Oh.
But I mean, that was before and after. So I don't know how much of it was after, because from what I read, and we'll talk about it in a bit here, that most people brain shuts down about 20 to 30 seconds after the heart stops. So like you said, you know.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, is it really worth it to record that is the time of death. Does it really
Right.
matter the extra 30 seconds?
Right. Exactly.
So it's still a really interesting find for
Yeah,
sure.
for
But
sure.
like,
And
does it really matter in the sense of like
when you
death?
die, technically. Yeah. I think it's
Yeah.
more interesting to think about like what that means as humans, you know, when you die and what that, you know, death means. Another interesting study in 2013 from the University of Michigan, boo, found that after clinical
From
death,
Michigan.
yeah, but I went to Michigan State.
Okay.
They're rivals. They're college
Okay.
rivals. Yeah.
Okay.
Found that after clinical death occurred in rats, their brain activity actually flared. So they had electrical signatures of consciousness that was at higher levels than when the animals were alive and awake. So like after their heart stopped, their like brain activity like went through the roof for a little bit.
Oh, little baby.
Yeah. And this was all cardiac arrest related. Another study from Sam Parno looked at near-death experiences, which is what we're going to get into next. And they interviewed more than 100 people who had survived cardiac arrest and found that 46% remembered their brush with death. They remembered bright lights, they remembered family or like being really fearful.
Wow.
And 2 of the patients could remember details of their resuscitation after they died. Which is crazy because like we said, the brain shuts down about 20 to 30 seconds after the heart stops, but they were consciously aware up to 3 minutes after.
Wow. Or it was like an outer body experience.
So and the researcher said it could also be an illusion to them, you know, like their brain firing things, because it was only 2 people out of the 100, but still kind of interesting to mention.
Yeah.
So I thought it was pretty interesting, and I wanted to hear other stories from people who have died and come back and what they remembered. So Distractify gave me a whole bunch of stories, so I'm going to read some.
Okay, I'm super excited.
So this one's from Dasher 11. It says, as you're dying, you start feeling tired in a way you have never before or will again until you die. The sheer act of staying alive is exhausting, but then it's all blank until I woke up from a coma a couple weeks later. You don't even remember the actual moment of death, and it takes weeks for your mind to remember everything leading up to it. I was in a ton of pain before and after because a couple of my organs were perforated, but dying itself wasn't painful.
Oh.
I agree that I'm also not afraid of death, not even just because of the pain factor, but because it feels less unknown to me and there isn't time for regret when it happens. Barry Medelson 86 said it's a black void. Then waking up in the ER surrounded by people running around like crazy. I was cold AF, but in reality just room temperature. I had to add and say that it was relatively peaceful, like being wrapped in a big warm blanket. Red shirt 2386. I coded after surgery. I remember being able to see and hear everything and understand what was happening, but I couldn't physically feel anything. It was deeply unsettling. Fugnagatino.
Love it.
I do. Said, my heart also stopped after surgery 3 years ago. I only remember them getting me back and drifting between darkness and seeing the nurses panic. Like you mentioned, I felt nothing and was just an impartial observer. The aftermath was the worst. Realizing how close I was to oblivion and recalling the disassociation was horrifying. People often say, oh, I'm not worried, she's a fighter, when someone gets very ill. But me, I feel like I was ready to watch myself fade in the dark despite being content and having things to live for. Unsettling is exactly the right word.
Wow.
Jim of Wales said, I was dosed up on morphine, tubes hanging out my face. I had a 1/3 chance of not making it through the night, acute pancreatitis caused by multiple organ failure. My last 2 thoughts before I slipped into oblivion: what the football scores would be tomorrow, specifically that some people would know them and I would not because I would be dead. And I'd quite like to watch some old Simpsons right now. That was it. Nothing about my family, friends. I'm not even that big of a football fan. Glad I woke up though.
That's so funny. I love that she's like not even a football fan.
Yeah.
And I'm just like,
that's what
oh my gosh, that's hilarious. I like that they're all like very different.
Yeah. Yeah, some are like it was great, some are like it was awful, but
yeah.
Mr. Teabag, UTPE, says I was electrocuted by about 13,800 volts. The doctors say it's likely the first hit stopped my heart and the second one started it before I was pulled like a lifeless corpse to safety.
Wow.
I remember experiencing the darkest dark and the most silent silence. I ceased to care that I was dying. Time seemed to change. It could have been hours, it seemed. It was only about 30 seconds. I felt as though I was floating and floated towards something that I eventually realized was my body and reality. Upon joining with whatever it was I was floating towards, I became self-aware in my body and heard electricity making horrible noises, and I knew I was in danger. From there, it was a horribly painful experience where I lost most of my toes due to tissue death and had severe electrical burns on all 4 limbs. More surgeries than I care to count, and seeing the round boned ends of my toes that were freshly amputated still haunts me a little.
Oh, that'd be awful.
Yeah. The best Joe ever says,
oh, that's a tall order.
I was dead for a very short period of time, like 30 seconds to a minute. There's a big misconception about it. It's not like sleeping at all. I'll try to explain. There's always a sort of white noise in the back of my mind. It quiets down when I sleep, but it's still there. I never noticed it before I died, but I do now. I don't want to romanticize death, but when I was out, it was like this perfect nothingness. And nothingness is so hard to imagine normally, but once you experience it and they bring you back, part of you wishes you could have stayed. There's no positive feelings there, obviously, but it takes away everything bad too. All your stresses, your nightmares, your troubles, all gone. Just nothing exists. It's beautiful in a way. I'm not suicidal at all, and I hope to live the rest of a long, happy life, but I'm very much looking forward to a lack of consciousness when I eventually pass again. And I can honestly say I don't fear death anymore.
Aw, nice.
KK. Okay, Mackie Drew. Anaphylaxis, wasn't breathing. I considered all the hallucinations I experienced likely due to hypoxic episode until I told my mom what I saw. A middle-aged man who wasn't in scrubs standing still at the end of my bed while all staff were running around and doing their business. I was having a nonverbal conversation with him, and he was telling me to calm down, focus on breathing. He wore tropical style button-down shirt, one of those old school newsboys hats, and had a very pleasant demeanor.
Aww.
Mom showed me a photo of my grandpa that I had never seen before, and it was the guy at the foot of my bed. He died before I was even born.
Oh,
isn't that sweet?
So cute.
Yeah. The shark from Jaws says
I thought I was like, oh, the shark from Jaws was a hallucination, but that's just the name.
Yeah, that's the next guy's name.
I'll be okay.
A former coworker of mine died during heart surgery. I think she was out for 90 seconds or close to it. She wasn't religious or anything. She said that she remembered being in the room and seeing her dead uncle and cousin standing at the far end of the room watching everything going on.
Cool.
Oh, that was it. Okay. Significant otter.
I thought there was going to be more.
I did too. Because there was a fun fact at the end, but it just said that she shared that during an icebreaker.
Oh, it's just like creepy. Like just the way that that it was just described in that story, because all I can think of is like, you know, you're on the table on one end of the room. It's like dark all around you. And then you just see these like 2 dead people standing in the fucking corner, quiet as a mouse.
Yeah, for sure. That'd be very unnerving.
Yeah, like, you are not supposed to be here. I think like it would be a lot less unnerving if they spoke.
Yeah. But if they're just sitting there quiet.
Standing there like staring at you.
Plus like knowing that like you're not supposed to be seeing them unless something is wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, significant otter said, I saw my grandpa. We talked for a while and he said I could go back with him or stay. I looked down and saw myself in that hospital bed with my brother holding my hand. He felt it turn cold and I never saw him cry that way before. Oh. I went back into my body and I felt more pain than I knew in my life. It's been a year of recovery and I lost most of my memory, but I'm happy. He had a skull fracture and a traumatic brain injury.
Aw. That's so sweet. It's like
Yeah.
Sam and Dean.
Aw. Hopeful husband said, not necessarily clinically dead, but I was pronounced dead 2 times in the same night after a car accident I was in when I was 16. My great grandma pulled me out of the car and we walked through this really peaceful field of flowers. When I woke up 2 weeks later, she was sitting on the edge of my bed and told me to tell my mom that everything was going to be okay. My great grandma died when I was 10, and before that, she had been bedridden after a stroke. I never saw her walk or heard her talk in my entire life. It was amazing and beautiful.
Aww.
All right, I've got 3 more.
Okay. These are great.
I know these are really interesting.
I love them.
Most you said, I was 6 to 7 years old, and one day I got rushed to the hospital by my parents because they heard me breathing really loud and hard. The last thing I remember were faces of the doctors and nurses above me while I was lying on my back, and then I flatlined. The weirdest, unexplainable thing happened then and there. I suddenly could see the whole scene as a spectator, like I was floating, like I was a floating spirit in that room. I could see myself getting revived, saw my mom crying and my dad comforting her. Then I saw a white entity shaped like my body falling through the ceiling and slowly, like a leaf in the wind, falling down to eventually land inside my body. That's when the experience ended. I was put in a medically induced coma and I woke up after some days. I don't remember. I had stuff plugged into me, an IV, red glowing elastic ring on my finger, etc. Anyway, I later mentioned to the doctors that I saw it all. I saw them using the defibrillators, my parents, etc. No one really believed me and told me that I was probably dreaming and basing my memories due to watching TV, but I know what I saw.
Like, how can you just dispute what somebody saw when you were literally experiencing it and doing it?
Yeah.
Like, if he explained to you exactly what you were doing, clearly he wasn't. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
oh, doctors.
Tallard Shrant says, this happened well before my girlfriend and I got together, but she intentionally overdosed on methadone and was clinically dead briefly at the hospital. She said she could see the doctors and her husband in the room from above, and then she found herself in a meadow with her first boyfriend, just talking like nothing had happened. Then she felt herself getting pulled out of there abruptly and suddenly sprang up with her eyes wide open, and she was back to life.
Wow.
And my last one from Silver Stars 13. I don't share it much, but I've had 4 heart surgeries. And in my first and third one, I coded. You had to be conscious for these surgeries to get your heart to react appropriately. The first time was just nothingness, black, just nothing. I can't even explain how long it felt like nothingness. And then I remember waking up with them over me saying, we lost you for a second there. Are you okay? The second time is a hard one to share. I woke up in a type of subway feeling thing, but everything was white. The subway, the tunnel walls, we were all speeding through. I didn't have a body per se. It felt like I was in the subway at times, and at times it was like I was looking out the window at the tunnel wall. I came to a stop and it was just black nothingness again. And then I heard a voice of a much older man. He said, "Are you ready to go?" And I just said nothing. Like I didn't know how to speak. "We're going now if you're ready." And something inside me felt so ready to go, like it was like I was a magnet to it, this unknown destination in the black nothingness ahead. I remember finally saying, okay. He said another time with a slightly different tone, "We'll be leaving here. You are ready to go?" And finally, something in me snapped. And I remembered I had a life and people I'd leave behind. And my first thought was, I can't leave my girlfriend. I couldn't do that. And my mom and my dad, my puppies, I can't leave any of them, my family, my friends. And I made a decision that I couldn't leave. I didn't even have to say it. Once I decided I couldn't leave and I was for sure staying, I woke up and came to consciousness with the medical team all around me.
Wow.
That's crazy.
It's really interesting how a lot of people are describing it as like a black nothing and how that's peaceful for them, because to me that would be scary.
Yeah, I would think it'd be really scary too.
Yeah.
But they said it was peaceful, but yeah, that's not to say that like death is going to be great, so you should speed yours along. Everybody experienced something different. And we just have no idea what's on the other side, but science is getting closer to figuring out what our brain's doing, which is really, really cool.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah. So next week I'll talk about different cultures and their version of death or the Grim Reaper.
Okay. What are your thoughts
on death?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't discount anything anybody said because we have no idea, you know? So I think it could be anything. Really.
I know it's not the same, but I really enjoy when people it's not shift, but they what is the word, Ashley?
I don't know. What are you trying to say?
Lucid dreaming.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. Just like the way that they were like that these stories kind of went, it just reminded me of lucid dreaming and some stories that people have of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting. It's like maybe they were lucid dreaming but I mean, they had the proof to say that they were dead and
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's all very fascinating.
Yeah. I think it's especially fascinating just because like we have no idea and we'll never know until we die, you know?
Fingers crossed. That's a long ways away.
A long ways away, hopefully.
Get to see my kids have kids.
Exactly. I want to be a grandma someday.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to talk about Nazi resistors.
Ooh.
And it came about when I saw an article for I was doing my all that's interesting deep dive. Like nice. My little rabbit hole, because at the bottom of every page it's like, oh, after reading this, go to this. And I went
those are nice.
Yeah. So I went to those and then I'm like, I don't really want to do those. And I looked at the bottom of those pages and there was like an ad for her story. And I'm like, yeah, okay, let's read about her. So I looked up how to pronounce names in this story because they're German and like Netherlands and stuff.
Okay.
But please be kind to me.
You're doing your best.
I'm doing my best. And my dialect is not great. So, but both articles, both stories are from All That's Interesting. And I used other articles as well. I don't remember what they were.
Okay.
So I'm assuming it was like history.com or the Smithsonian or something along those lines.
So All That's Interesting plus others.
Yes. All That's Interesting. You should sponsor me. And use your stories and turn them into my own. They're just really good with like their timeline and stuff.
Yeah. And they have interesting topics.
Yeah. And I find that a lot of other articles and websites, their stuff is kind of like jumbled and it's not always in order.
Yeah.
And I find that they're really good at putting their stuff in order. So I like to use them as kind of like a template.
Yeah.
And then I go to other articles and I kind of piece them together. So
gotcha.
Yeah. Just to bulk it up. Bulky.
Makes sense.
Yes. So I'm going to first start talking about Hannie Schaft. So she was just a teenager when the Nazis invaded Poland.
Okay.
German tanks entered the Netherlands a little over a year later in 1940. And she committed the rest of her life to eradicating the Nazi occupiers because she anticipated that her home was going to be taken under and just terrorized.
Yeah.
So she's like, I cannot let that happen. So she's like a really she's a huge key figure in the Dutch resistance during a huge part of World War II. She also assassinated Nazis and their Dutch allies.
Wow.
Like she's a freaking badass. She was called the girl with the red hair, and she was on the Nazis' most wanted list due to her outstanding resistance fighting record.
Wow.
Yeah. She was born in Haarlem, Netherlands on September 16th, 1920. Sadly, 7 years later, she became an only child when her 12-year-old sister died from diphtheria.
Aw.
Super sad.
Yeah.
She was really shy and she developed strong political opinions.
Sounds like it.
Because of her socialist parents, she grew up with a strong aversion to fascism. Schaft was enrolled in a law program at the University of Amsterdam in 1940 when the Nazis occupied the Netherlands. By 1941, Schaft had been persuaded by the Nazis' treatment of Jews to join a communist-leaning resistance group in Haarlem. Her missions started off small at first. She first crept into a public pool and she stole identification cards for two Jewish friends. And
Wait. She what in a public pool?
Crept. Like snuck in. Did you think I said craft?
I 100% did. And I was like, that's a weird way to do things, but okay. 100% thought you said crapped in a public pool. And I was like, was it a distraction to get the identities? I don't.
That would be a really good distraction.
It would.
Someone shit in the pool. Anyways.
Okay. Crept into a pool. Got it. Okay.
And she stole the identification cards. And these identity cards would aid in the protection of Dutch Jews from deportation to concentration camps.
Oh.
So she's amazing.
Yeah.
As a member of the resistance, she also helped raise funds for the movement. Her missions, though, became a lot more dangerous than just creeping into pools.
Or crapping, as one might think you said.
I think it's just you. The Nazi invaders attempted to compel Dutch students to swear allegiance to them in 1943. Even though doing so would have prevented them from continuing their studies, Hannie Schaft and most of her classmates declined.
Oh, wow.
Around this time, she started hiding Jews in her parents' house and providing them with false documents so they could flee the country safely. Schaft nevertheless wanted to go and do more. She's like, this is not enough. We need to do something else. So she asked for a gun so that she could start killing Nazis.
Wow.
And they agreed. Then, on the night that Schaft had planned to murder her first victim, nothing happened. The gun didn't fire.
Oh.
The target survived despite her several trigger pulls. She quickly discovered that the resistance had put up a test to see if she had the courage to fire the shot. And since she did, she started her journey of killing Nazis.
Why wouldn't they have just let her do it to see if she had the courage?
I think that they just didn't want to put her in harm's way if she couldn't kind of put up herself,
Gotcha. Okay.
That's my only logical explanation for that. And also to just see if she was faking or not, that she was really on their side.
Gotcha.
I don't know. Weirder shit has happened.
True.
Along with the Oversteegen sisters and two other female resistance members, Schaft frequently targeted the occupiers for execution. The three assassins eliminated Nazi officers and Dutch traitors collectively. And I read somewhere, I don't know how legitimate it is, but I read that they would go into bars and seduce these Nazis and be like, hey, you want to go away with us? And then they'd kill them outside.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And my friend was telling me yesterday that they used to carry secret notes in their hairpins and stuff to trade back information.
Yeah.
So,
that's
super
awesome.
cool.
Yeah.
In one mission, though, Schaft and her fellow resistance member, Jan Camp. I don't know if it's Bone Camp or Bone Comp. It's literally spelled like Bone Camp with a K. So I don't know. And I could not find a pronunciation. They rode their bikes up to a police captain who had ties to Nazis and they attacked him.
Oh, wow.
But the police captain fired back at Bone Camp before he could leave the area on his bike. Traumatized, Schaft fled to the Overstegens. She said, I messed up my job and Jan got caught. I rode away and Jan was shot down.
Oh, no.
Yeah, like so sad.
What, did she die?
Jan?
Yeah.
I think so. I think he did.
Oh, that's sad.
She was already listed, like I said earlier, as the girl with the red hair.
Mm-hmm.
And her capture had been ordered by Hitler himself.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's how
Good for her.
Yeah, that's how badass she was.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because of this, the Nazis would use the Bone Camp mission's failure as the key to locating her.
Oh, no.
Bone Camp originally resisted providing any information about the resistance despite being hurt and being questioned by the Nazis. But just before he passed away, Bone Camp gave a Nazi who had pretended to be a member of the resistance the address of Schaft and her parents.
Oh, no.
So the Nazis got Schaft's parents and brought them to a concentration camp.
Oh, no.
At this point, she was so grief-stricken that she was at the point that she was going to turn herself into the Nazis just so that she could get her parents back. She was instructed, though, to stay with the Overstegens until she calmed down and kind of just like collected herself.
Yeah.
In the end, she made the decision not to turn herself in, but she took on even riskier missions. She simply turned her red hair black and began inspecting German submarine facilities and rocket launch locations, aware that she was known as the girl with the red hair.
Yeah.
She's like, I need to change my identity and just get shit done.
Yeah.
Nazis detained Hannie Schaft at a roadblock in the closing months of the war while she was carrying contraband newspapers and a gun.
Oh.
The Nazis captured her after spotting the red roots poking out of her dyed hair.
Oh.
Yeah, like wear a hat.
Dang.
They had managed to capture the girl with the red hair, even though their war was undoubtedly lost. Schaft was taken to the overseen sand dunes by the Nazis just 3 weeks before the Netherlands was freed. She was sadly shot by a Nazi executioner who had his gun aimed at her. However, the first shot just injured her.
Oh,
and this is my favorite part. Not like the first part of the sentence, but what she says after.
Gotcha.
Before being fatally shot, she said, quote, I'm a better shot.
Good for her.
Yeah. I freaking love that. I'm like, oh my God, yes.
That's awesome.
Over 400 Dutch resistance members, including Schaft herself, were interred in a mass grave near the dunes where Schaft was murdered. The Dutch unearthed Schaft's body following the war, gave her a state funeral, and then reburied her. When Hannie Schaft tragically died on April 17th, 1945, she was only 24 years old.
Oh my gosh.
After the war, Freddie Overstegen frequently visited Schaft's grave and placed red roses behind. Even though many of her fellow countrymen and countrywomen didn't, Overstegen kept on the tradition of honoring her friend.
Oh.
Schaft's legacy was harmed during the Cold War because of her communist affiliations, even though she was generally honored as a resistance hero after World War II.
Yeah.
But during the latter half of the 20th century, the Dutch had returned to her tale and had started to once more revere her for her valiant resistance to the Nazis.
That's awesome.
Most recently, in 2020, Deputy Prime Minister Kajsa Olongren, sorry, honored her for the 100-year celebration of her birthday.
Oh.
Olongren said, Hannie fought for liberty and a society in which everyone has the right to participate. Her life teaches us that we must not look away from the fight against evil.
I love that.
Yeah.
Do you by any chance know whatever happened to her parents?
I don't.
Okay.
I unfortunately don't. I'm so sorry. They didn't really go into it. I am assuming the worst.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, the Netherlands was also free 3 weeks later. So I'm wondering if maybe they did end up surviving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. What a badass woman. And I'm so glad you did her story because I had never heard of her. And that's amazing.
Isn't she great?
Yeah. Yeah. That's really awesome.
And I'm like listening to that
and
song.
so young.
So young.
To be able to do all that and have the courage to do all that, you know?
Yeah. And she was beautiful.
Was she?
She was so pretty. Yeah.
Let me look her up. What was her name?
Hannie Schaft. HANNIE SCHAFT.
Oh, she was
so pretty.
She looks like a badass though.
Oh yeah. And there's like a picture of her with her like big gun and it's so cool.
Yeah.
And they have her gun, like her handgun on display at a museum.
I see that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like so freaking cool.
There was a 1981 movie called The Girl with the Red Hair.
Really?
Yep.
That's really cool.
That's really, really cool story. Yeah. I love that.
So that's my story on Hannie Schaft.
Love it.
And next week, I'm going to be doing the Edelweiss Pirates.
Ooh.
And they're from the other side, but kind of on the same team.
Okay.
So like they're Germans who fought against Nazi Germany, essentially.
Oh, I love it.
They're amazing. So I'm really excited to talk about it for next week. I was going to do it for this week, but it's just a little bit too long. And Ashley's allergies are really bad right now.
I'm dying, guys. My allergies, my nose is so stuffed up right now.
Yeah.
I keep muting it to sniff. So
yeah. So we'll continue this really cool theme next week.
Yeah.
So will Ashley, which is really cool. So it's going to be a 2-parter.
Cool.
I love it.
Good. I love it. You got a good joke for us, Jess?
I have a couple.
Okay.
It's based on our stories. They're death jokes.
Ooh.
So, okay. Sorry. I thought the viewing was last night, but when I got there, the place was dead. Being cremated is my last hope for a smoking hot body.
I like that one.
I suspected he was sick, but it was a dead giveaway when he signed his will.
Oh my
God. He used to ring the church bell. Now he's a dead ringer.
Oh my gosh. These are such dad jokes.
Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. One more. I'm sorry.
Okay.
These are so good. At the boss's funeral, a disgruntled employee kneeled next to the coffin and whispered, "Who's thinking outside the box now, Gary?"
Yeah, Gary.
Yeah, Gary.
That's amazing. Well, we hope you enjoyed that. And if you would
I have more. I have one more. I'm so sorry. I have one.
Okay.
No, I have 2 more. I'm sorry. I know I'm getting old. The other day I walked past a cemetery and 2 guys attacked me with shovels.
That's a good one.
Okay, last one. I swear. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Give a man a plane ticket and he flies for the day. Push him out of a plane at 3,000 feet and he'll fly for the rest of his life.
They're not wrong.
Not wrong.
Well, if you want more of us lovely ladies, you can find us on Facebook or Instagram and YouTube now.
Yeah. And if you would like to rate and review us, you can do so on Spotify and Apple.
Yay.
And I don't know if you can on YouTube, but follow us.
Yeah, subscribe.
Tell your friends.
Well, thanks for listening, everyone. And we look forward to bringing you 2 news stories next week.
Bye.
Bye.